My name is Eleanor Yick, and I'm the Voter Service Director for the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara Valley. This forum is being presented by all 5 of the leagues in Santa Clara Valley, which are Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Los Altos, Mountain View, San Jose, Santa Clara, Palo Alto, and Southwest Santa Clara Valley. The league has 2 separate and very distinct roles. We do voter service and voter education, which is what we're doing tonight. And we also do action and advocacy. The league is a nonpartisan political organization for women and men, encouraging informed and active participation in government. The league never advocates for or against any political party or any candidate. But at times, we do take positions on policy questions, but only after we have studied an issue and formulated a policy position on that. We encourage you to join the League of Women Voters if you're not already a member, and to participate in our efforts to strengthen our democracy. There are tables outside where you can find additional information about the 5 leagues and the way that you can join if you're interested. Before we begin our candidate forum, I want to remind you about a couple of important dates. First of all, many of you have already received your ballot. How many of you have received your ballot? Good. If you don't get it by the end of the week, then do call the Registrar of Voters and track it down. So the ballots were sent out this week, and you can easily track your ballot by going into the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters website. As you know, you can return your ballot in one of 3 ways. You can drop it off at the U.S. Post Office, you can drop it off at a secure drop box, or you can visit a vote center in Santa Clara County and drop it off there. You can also receive additional help at a vote center, even a replacement ballot. The location of these vote centers are listed in your voter's guide. And we strongly encourage you to use Vote 411, which you see on the back wall there, which replaced the League's Voter's Edge, where you can register, check your registration status, find out what's on the ballot, and even information about the measures on the ballot.
Good evening. I am Polly Bovey, and I am the co-president of the League of Women Voters Cupertino and Sunnyvale with Tracy Edwards. As Tracy mentioned, Eleanor Yick and I will be sharing pro-cons for Measure A and Prop 50. This will include nonpartisan information on these issues, the content and arguments for and against these measures, and some important financial information that might help you decide how you want to vote. So what exactly is on the ballot? Specifically, Measure A would increase local tax by 5/8% for 5 years. And Prop 50 would temporarily allow changes to congressional district maps until 2030 in response to Texas's partisan redistricting. You might wonder what the difference is between a state proposition and a local measure. As their name implies, state propositions affect the entire state of California, and a local measure can affect a city, county, school, or other local district. Both take a simple majority to pass and can be placed on the ballot by state or local government agencies, citizens who collect enough signatures. Because Prop 50 proposes a change in the state constitution, it required a vote of at least 2/3 of the state legislators to be placed on the ballot. Measure A local sales tax increase, was placed on the ballot by the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. Here are some key points to consider when evaluating ballot measures. You can see that this is a comprehensive list. It includes checking to see if the measure seeks to accomplish things that match your own goals, if it will potentially cause problems or unnecessary consequences, how it will be funded, whether there are issues truly need a change in our state constitution, or could this change be accomplished a different way? And as we all know, advertising by supporters or opponents can distort information about the measures. So it's important to know who is supporting or opposing the issues and come to a meeting like this one to hear the facts. In today's pro-cons, you will hear the results of the League's extensive research to create nonpartisan presentations about these measures. Listed here are neutral, unbiased, nonpartisan sites that we use. particularly the California Secretary of State Advanced Power Search, the Legislative Analyst's Office, the California Voter Guide, and one that's not listed here but should be, the Fair Political Practices Commission. We will begin by sharing information about Measure A. The wording that you will see on your ballot is as follows. Should the County of Santa Clara adopt a 5.8625% general sales tax for 5 years, providing $330 million annually to support critical local services and reduce the risk of hospital closures at Santa Clara Valley Healthcare? So what precipitated the need for Measure A? Currently, the County Board of Supervisors supports medical services for 4 large hospitals and over 15 medical clinics that provide trauma care for the residents of Santa Clara County, regardless of their health care insurance status. In general, Santa Clara County spends approximately 1/3 of their $13.7 billion budget on these services and facilities. The federal H.R. 1 bill, which some of you might know as the One Big Beautiful Bill, includes large reductions to healthcare and safety programs, including Medicaid, which we know as Medi-Cal in California. The $2.3 billion per year that Santa Clara County currently receives from the federal government will be reduced by $1 billion starting in 2026. Based on the significant loss of revenue, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors declared an emergency and proposed that Measure A be placed on the November ballot to supplement the loss of these dollars by asking voters to pass the 5/8% increase in the local sales tax. This was the maximum sales tax increase that the Board of Supervisors could consider. However, it does not cover the loss of $1 billion for the federal funding. It is considered to be an essential step in trying to keep local medical hospitals, trauma centers, and clinics open. On August 29, 2025, a Superior Court judge affirmed the county's declaration of fiscal emergency, which confirmed that Measure A could indeed appear on the November 25th ballot. This next slide shows the current countywide sales tax rate, which is 9.125 across the county, broken down. You can see in bullet 2 that only 0.125 of the current sales tax goes to the county. You also see here that a number of cities have added sales tax amounts beyond the 9.125, but all cities in the county, regardless of their current tax rate, will add the 0.625 if this measure passes. What exactly will Measure A do? The revenue from Measure A will be allocated to the county general fund. It's important to note that these funds will not be restricted specifically to hospitals and healthcare, but can be used to provide social services or for any other legitimate government purpose. Measure A will follow existing state laws, not apply to items such as groceries or prescription drugs, or services such as healthcare, education, and childcare, and other items that are not currently taxed. It's also true that Measure A requires annual public reporting on expenditures and independent oversight. This slide shows you the names of top supporters and top opponents of Measure A. These individuals signed the original pro or con arguments and rebuttal statements that were submitted to the Registrar of Voters. You may recognize some of these names and think about what they represent or how you know they operate, and it might help you make a decision about how you want to vote on Measure A. The statements on the left of this slide are from top supporters of Measure A. The main arguments put forth by supporters of this measure reflect the current emergency situation that was described earlier, the idea that this would be a balanced solution to the problem, which would include new revenue and needed cuts to keep programs available to Santa Clara County residents, and that the revenue generated would all remain in Santa Clara County. The statements on the right side of the slide are from top opponents of Measure A. They argue that sales tax is regressive and will disproportionately impact low and middle income voters, that the dollars raised will not fully cover the loss from the cut of federal funding, and a concern that the tax will become permanent. Just a note, you need to be aware all these statements, pro or con, come from people who want this measure to pass or fail. They're putting forth their best arguments to convince you to vote for or against Measure A. These are arguments made by advocacy groups, and they may or not be truly accurate. Now let's look at the top financial supporters for both sides of this measure. You can see on the left of this slide the top 5 donors in support of Measure A as of October 5th. There have been contributions from many large groups for a total of $2,142,000. The top 5 donors listed you can see below, but there have been more than 60 actually, contributions to the efforts to support Measure A. As of October 5th, you can see there is only one official donor in opposition to Measure A for a total of $358. So in a nutshell, what will your vote mean? The bottom line is this. A yes vote on the measure means the county would increase sales tax by 0.625% for 5 years. And a no vote on this measure means the county would not increase local sales tax. Sales tax would remain at current levels. Thank you, and I would now like to introduce Eleanor Yuk, who will now share information about Prop A.
Now on to Proposition 50, which is really interesting. It's a relatively easy position to understand. It amends the Constitution and it changes maps. That's pretty simple. But a lot of people say, I don't know how I'm going to vote on this because of its complexity when you get into the detail. So I hope from this presentation that you'll have some additional information that will help you when it comes time to vote. First of all, Proposition 50 authorizes the use of temporary changes to California's congressional district maps made in response to actions that the Texas legislature made when they changed their maps so that they would have additional representatives going to Congress, additional Republican representatives going to Congress. Our legislation, which was in response to that, became a constitutional amendment because we spell out in our Constitution how we draw districts and how we operate. So unlike Texas, that their legislature could just make the decision, we couldn't just make the decision. Legislation had to be passed, proposition had to be developed, an amendment to the Constitution had to be crafted, and the vote of the people has to come in as the last step, and you're the last step in the process. So let's go on to the next one. What is the question that's going to be asked here? It's a little bit different than what you'll see in your packet. Should California amend its constitution and authorize the use of temporarily redrawn congressional district boundaries in a way likely to decrease the number of Republican representatives from our state and increase the number of Democratic representatives from our state? Texas is trying to get 5 more Republicans. California is trying to get 5 more Democrats. Both parties want to be in control in Congress. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Now, how do we draw maps in California? It's a little bit different from many other states. We have a Citizens Redistricting Commission. We're very proud of having that. It was established by Article 21 of our Constitution. It's made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 people not affiliated with either party. And it requires that district lines be drawn in conformity with strict nonpartisan rules. Now, on the federal level, there are some rules, but the rules that we have in our process are much more detailed. What do they do in other states? How do the other states draw their lines? What's interesting here is there's actually a Supreme Court decision that came about because there was so much controversy and lawsuits about gerrymandered districts throughout the country, not just in California. So in 2019, the US Supreme Court in that decision, ruled that federal courts may not police gerrymandered districts, leaving that issue to the state courts and the political process in each state. So the federal government is not in charge of how districts are drawn in the states. In most states, the legislature has primary control of the redistricting process, both for the state legislature and the congressional district. These states, California, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, New York, and Montana, use independent commissions to draw congressional lines. And the purpose for that, or the goal of that, is to create districts that are not gerrymandered to keep certain legislatures or certain legislators in power. When you give the job to the legislature, of course, people who are there want to protect their job. This is the argument. And they draw the lines so that that happens. But when you have an independent commission, they operate by different rules. So this is something California is very proud of that we have. So California's Citizen Redistricting Commission. Prior to 2008, the legislature draw the line. Starting in 2008, Proposition 11 was approved and established a nonpartisan commission to draw the maps for the state assembly, the state senate, and the Board of Equalization. And in 2010, Proposition 20 was approved that transferred this authority to draw the congressional maps from the legislature to this independent commission. How are they drawn? After every census. So basically every 10 years. And they're drawn and they will reflect the state's number of representatives and to ensure roughly equivalent populations in districts. The maps that we had currently in place were drawn after the 2020 census was taken. So how did we get here? In 2021, California's congressional district maps were drawn and approved after the census. But as we all know, this past summer in August, the Texas state legislature approved new maps for the 2026 election that are predicted to increase the number of Republican representatives from that state. California responded to that. In the same month, August 2025, the California legislature passed new district maps, long process that I'm not going to go into, that are predicted to increase the number of Democratic representatives from our state. And because the Citizens Redistricting Commission was authorized by a state constitutional amendment, you, the voters, in the end, have to approve it. What will it do? Proposition 50 will amend the state constitution if it's passed, and it will authorize the temporary use of these new maps in 2026, 2028, and 2030. And the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission will resume their work after the next census in 2030. So we're kind of protecting it. We're saying we're just doing this temporarily, then in 2030, we're going to go back to. There's little change really to the district boundaries in Santa Clara County. If you go into the maps, and there are many maps available online that show you each district and how its lines change. In Santa Clara County, there really aren't dramatic changes. And one thing that's a little different, even though some of the lines might have changed, you might move from one Democratic district to another Democratic district. Your chances of being moved to a different party dominant situation is almost non-existent in Santa Clara County because we're a heavily Democratic county. And it does not affect state senate or assembly districts. I love this map. Very different than most of the maps that you will look at. I like it because it gives you a broad overview of the potential impact. Now, as an individual and a voter, just like I mentioned, I want to know how my district changes. Well, you can use that website there, that link. You go into that link, you enter your address, they show you your current district, and they show you the little part that might change, if at all. So I'm in Congressional District 16. It's basically the exact same district. A little pocket in the southeast has been moved over to a neighboring district. So if you want to look at your own particular district, I advise you to go into this link and you'll see it specifically. But what I like about the maps that I've provided here, which come from Ballotpedia, so you can go in there and you can check it out yourself. The map on the left-hand side reflects the voting results from the 2024 presidential election. And you'll see what is Democratic, darker blue, mostly along the coast, okay? You see the Republican area predominantly or heavily towards the inner part of the state and certainly the northern part of the state. And you see other changes down there at the bottom. Now, the lightly colored blue and the lightly colored orange kind of color, those are leaning districts, meaning it was very close to either becoming a Democratic area or voting Republican area, but they were leaning in one direction. So a lot of those, when they were redrawing the maps, they looked at this. Now, what's interesting, and I'm not going to go into all the details on the map on the right, but I love the map on the right because it shows you this is what they hope the changes in the maps will accomplish, and we will get 5 more Democratic representatives. Now, what did they do? How did they do this? They took these voting results. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I have a piece of paper here with me for those who really like it. You can take that at the end and read it. They took the voting results and they superimposed them on this new map by precincts, by district, but they put them into the new district. Districts and precincts don't align all the time. And they have even a complicated process how they took the ones that were slightly in there and how did they calculate that. A lot of math behind this, but basically, when you look at that map, you can see the dramatic difference. Okay, if it is successful and the same voting patterns from 2024 happen in 2026, this is what the map, this is what the California map is projected to look like. And you can see some dramatic differences, particularly in the north. Those 2 districts, District 1 and 2, look at all coming down the Central Valley and actually the eastern part of the state, heavily Republican. So they lost a couple of districts, but they consolidated more. I mean, when I look at it, I say, wow, this really polarizes the state even more. But again, there's lots of math and detail behind this, but basically, what it shows me, if this temporary use of the new map is successful, they predict this is what will happen. And that's how we pick up the 5 additional Democratic seats, because some Republicans will lose their seat in this configuration. So that's what Proposition 50 does. I mean, aren't these maps great? I mean, they really are good. Okay, what will it cost? So the cost for this proposition, one-time cost of counties up to a few $1 million. I love the way it says a few $1 million, but it's a few $1 million. One-time cost to the state of roughly $200,000. But what this slide does not show, and you don't see it in the literature, is that there was a cost to the state to schedule a special election of over $200 million. So that's not related to this, okay? That's the general cost for scheduling a special election. These are the costs related to this proposition, okay? Now, top supporters and opponents. Again, we provide you with this information because you might recognize some of these names and you might not. Some of these names might mean something to you. Some of them might not. But to me, it's another piece of information. It tells me who are the big supporters of this proposition. And then I ask myself, why? Who are the top opponents? Why? And it just helps me in my decision making. Now, the supporters are very obvious. Governor Newsom and Alex Padilla and Nancy Pelosi. I don't know the opponents that well, but they're from verified organizations. Roberto Moncada, Faith Bautista Tamashiro, Taylor Shorty. So again, it's another piece of information for you to have. Now, what do the supporters say? And again, I'll reiterate what Polly said. These arguments are the best arguments that each side can put forward. So if I'm a supporter, I want you to vote yes. These are my arguments. If I'm an opponent, these are my arguments to convince you not to vote for this proposition. And as it says in that disclaimer at the bottom, these arguments come from advocacy groups. Their job is to convince you one way or the other. They might not be totally accurate. They might not be totally true. It's nuanced how they word it. What do the top supporters say? Number one, levels the playing field. In response to Texas, California said, hey, if they're going to do this and get 5 more Republicans to better ensure their majority in Congress, we're going to change our maps temporarily to give us 5 more Democratic representatives. Number 2, it's only temporary. We're not doing away with the Citizens Independent Commission. We're just doing this temporarily so that we can use these new maps in 2026, 2028, and 2030. And they put in there that actually, and it's part of the proposition, it's a proposal for national reform. There's a proposal to the federal government to implement or promulgate or pass a constitutional amendment that redistricting should be done by independent groups in every state. And lastly, there's really low cost to the counties and the state per se. These are the major arguments. The opponents say, wait a minute, this weakens our model. We fought long and hard to get a Citizens Redistricting Commission, and you're weakening that. And they're concerned about that. Secondly, Proposition 50 could set up a dangerous arms race in redistricting, normalizing this mid-decade changes instead of after a census, doing it really when you need it or mid-decade. It confuses the voters. Proposition 50 complicates California's redistricting process by layering new maps on top of the maps that we were using, and it sets a dangerous precedent. If you do it once, you open the door to do it again and undermine the Citizens Independent Commission. Top donors, lots of money are being spent on this proposition. It's projected to be the most expensive proposition ever. So the top donors, again, you might recognize some of these, you might not. They might have meaning to you, they might not. I always look at the total amount. So when I look at Prop 50, so far, and these numbers change every day because there are contributions coming in every single day. Currently, $127 million, $127.2 million has been donated. And it has come from 147,203 separate donations. A lot of people involved. Top donors opposing it. The first one is a PAC, $41 million. Charles Munger, $32 million, and so on. Again, I look at the total. $77.5 million. Not quite half less, but less. Number of contributions, much smaller, 239. But very big contribution, very big contribution. So you look at that and you say, well, why? Why is HMP supporting this? Why is the No on 50 congressional leadership group supporting it. Same thing with the other. And that might have meaning to you, and it might not have meaning to you. Depends on what you know and what you agree with. For example, if you see a name and you recognize that and you generally agree with that politician or person, then you might be swayed. If you see a name that generally you agree with and they're opposed to it, it might make you stop and think, well, maybe I should look at this more. That's another piece of information to help you make a decision. Okay, what is your yes vote line, bottom line in the end? Yes vote would mean California would amend its constitution and use a new legislatively drawn congressional district map for those elections 2026, 28, and 30. And after the 2030 census, the Citizens Redistricting Committee would resume its work. A no vote means California would not amend its constitution and would continue to use the current maps that were drawn by the Citizens Independent Commission. So that's basically the information about Proposition 50. I hope maybe it gave you a little bit more information that helps you decide how you're going to vote on this. And I think we have time for one or two questions that I might try to answer. And I saw your hand first. Yeah.
How does the new legislative map protect the rights and voice of minority communities?
Stand your question.
So I wanted to ask, how does the new legislative map, so the one drawn by the legislators, right, protect the rights of communities, minority communities such as Latino, Asian communities?
How are those maps drawn?
Yes.
They actually, I have the name of the group.
Because, for example, the Marine County, they were put together with the central, I think near the Lake Tahoe area, I think.
Okay, what I
Something
can
like
tell
that,
you
yeah.
is Redistricting Partners, which is an LLC based in Sacramento, California, drafted the congressional district map that the legislature adopted. Now, they had input from legislators, and it wasn't just one person making this decision. Well, it depends on whether those, they didn't go out and do community input, if that's what you're asking. They didn't look for that. Versus, for example, the Citizens Independent Commission, when they draw their lines, they have to attempt to keep communities of interest together. They have a whole set of criteria to work on. The set of criteria here, to be very honest, is create districts that we can predict will go Democratic. That was the major criteria, just what it is.
Eleanor, if I could just chime in real quick, one of the demographic cuts they did was to ensure that minority populations in the state were not disrupted in their prior balance of representation. That was a cut and filter that the legislature looked at, and a number of groups that represented different communities in California sort of, I wouldn't say signed off, but said that it was fair.
Yeah.
When the dust settled on that.
Right. Okay, you had another question. Yeah.
If California voters wanted to send more Democrats back to Congress, do they have that ability today under the current system?
Well, there's always that possibility. I mean, we can identify districts from that map that are heavily Republican right now, and you could have some potential Democratic candidate come about who was charismatic and had a message and resonated with the people and could get elected. Is it likely the way the districts are right now? No. But could they? Potentially, yes. I mean, there's no way, law or statute, that prevents that. Oh, I see. Even more than the 5, you mean? Oh, yes. Again, yes. Okay, I don't know. One more question, then I'll ask my husband. Okay, Dave, what's your question? I thought I told him all the answers already, but Yes, what's your question? And don't make it hard, okay?
This may be a hard one, so maybe you or someone else can answer. Texas, the Democrats are doing this in response to the Texas thing. Is the Texas, is that permanent or is that temporary? One. And secondly, are there any other states that have done what Texas done? I recall that there are one or two others besides. So 5 votes may not be enough to counteract that's a two-part question.
Best of my knowledge, the Texas legislature is in charge of drawing their map. So they have the right to do it. And they've created new maps, which in effect are the new maps. It doesn't have a timeline on it. It doesn't have a timeline on it because their legislature draws the map. And your other question, Dave, are there other states that are doing this? Yes, it's in process. So it's a ripple effect that can go out there. Okay, one more question maybe? Okay, yes.
I was very surprised to see Charlie Munger's name on it. He actually passed away before the Proposition 50 was in place. So is that a junior?
Oh yeah, the father who made all the money, he's passed away.
But this is the
His son,
got it.
yeah. And actually Charles Munger was a very, very strong supporter of the California Citizens Independent Commission. And very instrumental in getting that passed, the creation of it. So of course he's opposed to changing it. Of course he is, yeah. Okay, all right, well, I hope that helped you make your decision about Proposition 50. I think that concludes everything tonight. Thank you for coming. Yes, thank everybody for coming. Thank all the league members who helped out tonight, helped with organizing, and Cupertino Sunnyvale for this wonderful facility and our IT support. Thank you so much.